Test. 1, 2, 3. Can you guys all hear me? So I'm doing something a little bit different this time. You might notice that. I'm sitting in a bathtub right now. And behind me is Todd Howard in the shower. Yes, for anyone questioning this right now, this is indeed my own bathroom. And I'm a 27-year-old man sitting in his bathroom with his laptop and microphone to record a video for you guys, because I live to entertain you. Aren't you entertained? So yeah, I've been a bit absent from making videos. I'm sorry about that. I was planning to make a review about Like a Dragon Pirate Yakuza, but unfortunately the audio was very shitty and corrupted, and I basically had to film that again. And I'm a professional video artist, so I was like, no, that quality is not good enough. Today we're going to review Clair Obscur. It's basically right now the internet's favorite game, best game of all time. Nothing wrong with it. By the way, indeed a very good game, and I do want to talk about that in today's video as a review kind of thing. Normally I'm doing the green screening stuff, but I was kind of thinking, let's spice it up a little bit. Let's sit in the bathtub, and maybe that's going to be a new format or something like that. So the thing is, with this game, I was very excited already from the start when it was revealed, because it's basically based on JRPGs, but then made by a Western developer, Sandfall Interactive. And these guys are basically our ex-Ubisoft developers in Paris. And they were one day like, yeah, we are bored and we want to do something else. So let's start our own new studio to make a JRPG of all things. And I find that absolutely awesome. Now, this game is developed by French people. This is what I get when I Google French guy. As a Belgian guy myself, technically I'm Dutch, but I live in Belgium basically my whole life now, right now. I have to say, like, French bad or something like that, or make fun of them, but they did an awesome job with this game, putting so much French references about bread and wearing berets and Eiffel Tower. No, there is more to this game than meets the eye. You might think, Max, the title of this video, critically, don't you like this game? I do like it, but I also think that this game is maybe just a tiny, smithery little bit over positively reviewed, especially on Metacritic. Now, I wouldn't really take Metacritic too seriously, because that's basically a protest review. This game is sitting basically at a 9.6, 9.7 out of 10 on Metacritic on the user score. And that is basically the best score ever for a video game on Metacritic. Is Clair Obscur Expedition 33 the best video game ever made? No, far from it. I will talk about that in today's video. So let's start with the graphics. This game looks absolutely beautiful. It's made on Unreal Engine 5, and you immediately notice that fidelity. But not just really that, the character design is awesome, and the level design. When I talk about level design, I talk more here about the art direction in this game. It has a lot of influences from things like Final Fantasy. They were kind of open about that in the Q&As with the developer, stuff like that. The game is heavily inspired by Final Fantasy, Persona. But I also found some inspiration towards Dishonored, with that kind of medieval steampunk-esque European kind of style, but then French, basically. And you also see a lot of like French Renaissance kind of style in the buildings, stuff like that. And you also see this again in the worlds that you traverse. Now, this is not an open world game, and this never really had to be an open world game. From a graphical perspective, this game is kind of just amazing. And by the way, this game only costs 50 euros. Excuse me? 50 euros, $50 for a game like this? Now, the thing is, this is, of course, a AA game. It's not a AAA game, and you will see that in the gameplay. But still, though, only 50 for this game is really a steal, and it might be not enough, in my opinion. They could have asked 60 bucks easily for this. How much quality there is towards this game from a graphics perspective, as well as gameplay, is kind of just nuts. And I only can really congratulate them. Also, the particle effects in combat. Also, the game runs very well. I had absolutely no issues on PlayStation 5. Keep that in mind, I have not tested out the PC version or Xbox version for this game. But on PlayStation 5, this just runs very well, in my opinion. Now, there is one negative that I do want to talk about in the graphics perspective, and that is the menu design. They kind of want to go for a Persona style with this very cool menu, stuff like that. And it kind of works in the combat UI. It looks very cool. They go for this kind of dual style with two colors, with black, a lot of black and gold, accentuating gold color, shall I say. But sometimes how the menu is just laid out is just very confusing, and it isn't very intuitive, shall I say, to go through the menu and equip different weapons, or the game calls it pictograms, I believe, that you pick up, the different powers that you can pick up. I do think the menu should have been a bit more intuitive to use. That's the only complaint, though, I have from a graphics perspective. Also, let's quickly talk about the soundtrack. My god, it's impeccable. It sounds amazing. I have no complaints about the soundtrack at all. And most of the graphics is also amazing, especially for a AA project. So Expedition 33, as I said earlier, is this traditional turn-based game. That's what they were inspired by Final Fantasy, Persona, Dragon Quest, that traditional turn-based combat, but they really wanted to spice it up a little bit, to modernize it as well. And how do you really do that? Well, they tried to do a parrying and dodge system in this game, and I absolutely loved it. So think Final Fantasy VII OG, but with the skill system of Lost Odyssey, also mixed with the parrying from a From Software game like Sekiro, but not as difficult as a Souls-like game. And that's really what Expedition 33 is in a kind of nutshell, shall I say. Every party member actually plays very uniquely, in a unique way, with their own abilities. As an example, Mael, she is the youngest character in the party, and she has this stance ability. If you use a particular ability towards an enemy, you might go into the offensive stance. And if you go into the offensive stance, you do 50% more damage, but you can also receive 50% more damage from the enemy. Then there's also a defense stance, and that is basically the exact opposite of the offensive stance. And there's also the virtual stance, which is the ultimate stance that she can get, and she will do 200% more damage, I believe, towards the enemy. Every character like this plays basically differently and has their own kind of quirks, and it is just really cool. You also have weapons in this game. You can get them from defeating enemies. bosses, and you can also upgrade these weapons, and they have their own elemental affinity. So one weapon might do extra fire damage and leave burn, you know, the traditional JRPG stuff. And you can use that in tandem with your Picto abilities to basically really strategize like a traditional turn-based combat system would, like a Persona, shall I say. I mentioned Lost Odyssey, and this is because the pictogram system, you can basically equip these pictograms, and then there's a specific currency that you can use so that you can learn these abilities from these pictograms on every character. It's basically fully Lost Odyssey, their system used in this game, and I think it's a awesome system. You're basically constantly swapping these pictogram abilities, and after 4 battles, your character will remember this ability forever, and you can use then this currency to kind of use them even though you haven't equipped these pictograms. So that just brings more spice towards the gameplay. Now, I mentioned that this game is all about parrying, and they aren't joking about that in this game. Every enemy has not just weaknesses, but also a different type of moves that you need to dodge or parry. So basically how a battle goes in Expedition 33, you might fight against an enemy, a new one. It will do an attack at you very fast, and you won't be able to dodge maybe at first, so you will have to learn their move sets and their patterns basically, just like a Souls-like game. Once you know kind of the move, you can perfectly dodge these moves and you won't receive any damage at all. So if you are very good at dodging and parrying, you can basically kill any boss with just pure skill instead of really using that turn-based system with the whole weaknesses stuff like that, if you are just very good at dodging. In the beginning of the game, when you start your new game, basically, they ask you to choose a difficulty. Easy, normal, hard. You get it, most games do this. But they say at the normal difficulty, I always play my games on normal difficulty, that the dodging and the parrying is kind of an optional thing. And in my opinion, this is not the case at all. It is not optional at all. Especially for later boss fights, you will absolutely need to learn to at least dodge the attacks. Parrying is maybe a bit more optional, but if you can't dodge attacks later on in the game, especially on normal difficulty, you will have a pretty difficult time. So that is kind of a lie. I'm sorry, I'm going to say that. They say it's optional, but it really isn't. You will have to learn to dodge. So if you are a turn-based player that isn't really used to action stuff, you will have to think about that, because it will be a necessity, especially later down in the game, shall I say, towards end game bosses. I also really like the pacing of the gameplay. The game constantly introduces you to a new character, and of course, because all these characters play very distinct from each other, the game constantly really spices up every so often, so you will have a whole new tool set to your disposal. Also, I totally forgot to say this at the graphics part, but the voice acting in this game is also just very good. They actually act like real people, and when they are speaking towards each other in the game, you will notice how there is a lot of nuance between the characters. They are speaking over each other also, and that gives it just a little bit more realism, especially for storytelling purposes. And that is all really coming from a AA game, which is kind of just nuts. You would expect that from like a Last of Us or like a God of War, like these big Sony games. But this AA game is delivering that type of storytelling, and that is just nuts, in my opinion. Now, the gameplay is not fully flawless though. I do have some complaints. First of all, the level design, especially in the beginning of the game, can be very linear and corridory. Think of Final Fantasy 13, how sometimes it can get very linear. And the start is like that, but once you play a little bit more, the game will open up more and you will have this mini-map, just like OG JRPGs. And that's a very cool thing as well. But yeah, the beginning of the game can feel a little bit linear. But a bigger problem though, in my opinion, is the fact that there is no minimap. Some levels can just be very confusing to navigate through. And sometimes the golden path, as it's called in a video game, basically the path that leads you towards the objective, can be a bit, shall I say, confusing in especially some levels that I believe, like the Gestural Forest level is a big example of this, as well as another level later in the game. I don't remember anymore. It's a very gray level with a lot of stones. There is no minimap at all. I don't see the reason for not having a minimap, because you can still explore everywhere. I guess they were thinking it enhances exploration if you don't have a minimap or map at all, but I just find it kind of just annoying. I'm not going to lie. Though it's a small thing, but I do think it's still a thing that I do need to say on this game. But the gameplay is just really good in my opinion, especially the combat system. One of the best turn-based combat systems out there next to Metaphor. We just had Metaphor ReFantazio not too long ago. And something like Persona, I really loved it. It does lean heavily though on that parrying and dodging. And if you aren't a fan of that, you might have some problems with this game. But still though, I think they did a very good job on the gameplay aspect with this game. Now, I do want to talk about the storytelling. And this is where I do have some problems with the game, and some people might kill me for this in the comments section on the internet. Keep in mind, this is a review, and of course reviews are always subjective. You don't have to agree with me, but this is honestly how I feel about the game when I finished it, and I do think it's a very important for you guys to know about. The thing is, the story for this game is actually really good, especially the lore, and it starts off very intriguing with this very strong opening. This is one of the best openings in a video game so far. I'm genuinely serious about that. The characters were also pretty nice, although the character developments for some characters could have gone a bit further. I will touch upon that later in the video. But the actual lore and story itself is really good. You have the paintress, and she's basically every year drawing this new number on a big giant monolith. And every year when you have this number and you have this age, basically everyone who is 33 now this year dies, basically. That's how the story starts, with a very unique and interesting premise. It's just very interesting. You get immediately captivated by this premise. Why does the paintress exist? Why is she drawing these numbers on this monolith? What is this world about? Why are these expeditions being sent? That type of stuff. All these questions you have. It's a very interesting, unique story. And that's how the game basically starts. My problems really arise later in the game. And I do have to talk about spoilers. So if you don't want to talk about spoilers, if you don't want to hear any spoilers from me, I will put somewhere a timestamp that you can skip towards the ending and my verdict. I will give you 5 seconds for you to click towards this timestamp. I will wait. Okay, the very first big thing, plot twist that happens in the game, it's basically in the middle of the game. Well, technically it's not the first plot twist, but kind of the second plot twist. The main protagonist Gustav dies. He's dead. And basically you learn about a new character called Verso, and he replaces Gustav as the main character going forward in this game. And that's a very ballsy move to do. It's basically a la Metal Gear Solid 2 or Last of Us 2, that you get to play as this dual protagonist approach. And normally the thing is, I don't mind killing off characters, but if you are going to kill off the main protagonist, you need to have a very, very good reason for that narratively. They kind of do, and also they kind of don't. I was hoping they would at least do something with Gustav, maybe at the end of the game, but no, they don't do anything with Gustav at the end at all. Gustav doesn't come back in any way. It's never really kind of explained why Gustav had to die. Now, there's a reason for it. Story-wise, there's a reason why Gustav has to die, and it has to do with Mael. I'm not going to spoil that any further, but the thing is... Hey guys, this is Max from the future here. I'm going to explain in this part of the video why Mael should be the main protagonist instead of Gustav. And in my opinion, I'm doing a very horrible job of that, on explaining that in this video. So I'm going to pause it here in the editing and take over and just quickly explain why I think Mael should have been the main protagonist. So the thing is, the game starts off as Gustav on that rooftop, and you then do the whole tutorial section, and you fight against Mael, and then you go with your girlfriend, basically spend the last minutes, shall I say, of a certain event then happening. And I get that that scene is more impactful when you play as Gustav. And that's why I'm thinking, okay, in my version, just start off as Mael, going to get Gustav on the rooftop, play as Mael for the tutorial, and then when you go down the elevator thing, you switch to Gustav, so you play a little bit as Gustav there with his girlfriend. Then the scene has still the same impact, and then after all of those cutscenes, give the control back to Mael, then play the whole first act as Mael. I think that would have been a better choice. This way, you don't get too attached to Gustav to be like, what the hell, he's going to die for nothing. And he still kind of served his purpose. So Mael is very sad because she is the main protagonist in the story. And the ending, which I will talk about later in this video, will have a bigger impact when you have to choose between two characters. So I think this way, this would have been, better structure. But, you know, I'm not one of those developers there at Sandfall Interactive. They chose to make Gustav the main protagonist. But most of the story is actually about Mael. And I find that kind of weird then to kill him off like that. So yeah, that's really what I tried to explain in the video. But I kind of do a bad job at it. Let's continue. Now, my second problem is with the ending. Clair Obscur 33 has two endings. One you choose for Mael, her ending, or the B route you choose for Verso, his ending. And basically the game drives a wedge between these two, and it does hint about it and foreshadow about it in the game. It's not really what the game tries to do, because what they try to do basically is to have two endings that are very just depressing, very moral gray, shall I say, and I think that that's a good idea. The problem I have with these two endings is that one of the two endings, namely the Verso ending, is much more favored than the Mael ending. And how do I know this? Well, just look at the direction of the cutscene between the two. If you compare them, I'm not going to show these cutscenes because I don't want to spoil you guys any further, even though I don't really agree with Verso's ideology. And that's what the game tries to do. You can choose between two ideologies. I really side more with Mael's ideology at the end of the game. But then basically her ending is kind of the bad ending. And I'm going to be honest, that ticked me off a little bit. The devs do prefer one ending over the other, and I know the whole game is about letting go of grief, that type of stuff. But if you want to go for two morale gray endings that the player can choose, and it doesn't matter really which ending they choose, then you should follow your own rules and choose to not favor one ending over the other. It is clear to me that they are favoring one ending over the other, and from a morality standpoint, shall I say, and I did not like that. I'm going to be honest, that is a bit unfortunate. The game doesn't really develop other characters really any further, like Monoko, and you also have another character named Ciel, and these characters are very nice, but at some point they don't really get any more character development, which I am a bit disappointed by as well. So I do have some qualms with the storytelling here, because at the same time it's really good, but they also make these very strange directions with the story that I do find kind of weird. But oh well, that's really the only complaints I have. Keep in mind, this is all my opinion, it's all subjective. You might not even agree with me. I also encourage you to watch other YouTube reviews on this very topic. You might not see even different opinions on it, but that's really my opinion. I do think they favor one ending over the other. But yeah, in a nutshell, I absolutely love Clair Obscur 33 from a gameplay perspective, especially how they do the Picto system and just how intensive the turn-based combat system is. I haven't felt such a impactful turn-based combat system since Metaphor. The fact that you can make a turn-based game just as good as Metaphor and Persona, I think that's high praise. And I get the high reviews for this game, and I also think it deserves it. Keep in mind, this is a AA game. That's basically why everyone on the internet is basically white knighting this game, because it worked on a smaller budget and they deliver so much quality. It's kind of nuts. And it's so far, even though I have qualms with the story, it's still so far my favorite game of this year. So if I would give this a score, I would probably give this a 9.5 out of you see that mountain over there score. 9.5 out of mountain. That's my final verdict for this game. So thank you guys for watching this video. It was a little bit different. I just really wanted to do something else for a change instead of always doing green screening. Maybe I will go back towards green screening in the next video. Let me know what you guys think of this format. I can maybe call it the hot tub review, the steamy review, the water review. Thank you guys for watching. As always, like this video if you like it. Subscribe towards the channel if you want to see more video game reviews and essays. That's what I usually do towards big single player games on this channel. Mostly just single player games. I don't really cover multiplayer stuff. I sometimes also do just industry videos, gaming news reviews, also just discussions, that type of stuff, anything towards single player video games. Subscribe towards Licht, that would be awesome. I love you all.
Feel the rush.
By the way, I am literally risking my life here. If the fucking water goes off, right? I'm sitting here with full electricity. I can't just be electrocuted. I think I deserve a like. Or a subscription, maybe. Okay, I'm basically risking my life here for your guys' entertainment. Be happy.